a start. Thank you very much. So we're not expecting a fire alarm. So if it does go off, it means that we do need to evacuate the building. So we need to go out the main entrance, and then we meet turn right and down the bottom of the hill by the cathedral is where we would be gathering if there was a fire alarm. If I go around my committee member colleagues, welcome everybody. Should we start with you, Kerry, and then introduce yourselves? Thank you.
Kerry Bales, Hartcliffe and Withywood.
Sarah Classic, Hengrove and Whitchurch Park.
Henry Mashalla, Councillor for Stoke Bishop.
Shona Jeffrey, Councillor for Lawrence Hill.
Cam Haywood, Councillor for Knoll.
Speeding through, aren't we? Ellie Freeman, Bedminster.
Sue Collar, Bishopsworth.
Katja Hansjen, Brislington East.
Thank you very much. And if I ask officers to introduce themselves as they speak to their papers, although I do have Hannah Woodhouse, Director of Children's Services, and Ian Hurd, who is doing our clerking for us, and Rose is doing our tech. Yeah, okay. And we are also going out on the YouTube filming video, so just so people are aware. Thank you. So we have a full house in terms of our CYP committee membership, so well done. No apologies, no absences or submissions. Has anybody got any interests that they wish to declare about any of the items that we'll be discussing this evening on the agenda? I will take that as a no, thank you. And that takes us on to item number 4, which are the minutes of the previous meeting. So if you remember that we didn't approve the first, our meetings from our previous gathering together. So we've got 2 sets. Can I do them both together, or shall I do one and then the other? Okay, we're going to take them separately. So that means I need to look at the dates.
28th November.
Oh, okay. So, oh yeah, it's here. Okay, so there we've got a set from the 28th of November 2024. Do I ask, can I have a seconder that they're an accurate record?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Thank you very much. And then
Committee to agree.
all right, okay. And did the committee agree? All nods. Okay, thank you. Apart from Councillor Freeman, who's got a sandwich in her mouth. And then we have a second set from the 23rd of January 2025. Am I okay to ask for a seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Are committee content and happy to confirm that that's a true and accurate record of what happened in January? Everybody's nodding. Okay, thank you very much. So that takes us to agenda item number 5. So this is Chair's announcements. So a few things have happened since we were last together. We've obviously passed our budget, so that's really good news. So we can get on with the investment that was passed into children's social care. And I'd also like to invite Hannah to just talk to us about our Ofsted visit.
Yes, we had a focused visit, which was looking at the front door and took place in the week before, but the visit actually took place in half term over 2 days. So I just wanted to record my huge thanks to the team for all of the work that always goes into inspections. We've had a draft report and we've gone back on that, and we expect that to be published towards the end of the month. And so therefore I can't say a lot, but other than to say there were lots of positives which we were really pleased to celebrate, and of course there are always areas for improvement with Ofsted, so we welcome that too. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And we also, there was the annual Bristol Parent Carers conference that happened. Was it Monday? Yeah, it was Monday. And that was very well attended. I understand there were over 800 people that were there at some point during the day. That would have been a mixture of parents. There would have been Senkos there, possibly other external sort of health staff, stuff like that. But it's a very good turnout for that conference. Anything else you want to say? Okay. And so that takes us on to agenda item number 6, which is the public forum. So we've not had any public questions, but we have had 2 statements. One from Jen Smith, who I can't see is in the public gallery. And then a second one from Robin Sewall. So I'm going to assume that you're not Robin. No, okay. Okay, so with our public statements, obviously they've been published as part of this agenda pack. Every member of the committee have been able to have a look at them. They're both personal experiences. It gives us a good understanding about what has gone on, the impact that that's had on individuals and families. And I would say that probably the second piece of public forum was a bit more, I got the impression that it was still happening for that child, and that child was still quite young, and it was kind of still going on. So it's keeping us reminded that whilst we look to move things forward for our children with special educational needs and SEND, there are still clearly things within the system that are not working for our children. Okay, so moving on to agenda item number 7. So this is the corporate parenting strategy update. Members will might remember that the corporate parenting strategy came through our committee, and then it went up to full council as well. And so this is an update for us as to which bits of that strategy have been either implemented or are sort of need updates, and they're on their way. So I'm going to invite Fiona to introduce yourself, Fiona, and then talk to the corporate parenting update for the strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Fiona Tudge, Service Director for Children and Families. So this is an update on the corporate parenting strategy signed off last July. So firstly, a key area of the work which we felt was really important this time to be really clear about was establishing the solid foundations and the building blocks to progress the actions and the work to be undertaken. So the strategy has been presented at a number of internal leadership boards, and we have signed off a clear delivery and action plan. And we have established a programme board that's multi-agency, so includes our partners with clear leads and champions to make sure that we are tracking and progressing those actions. And we've also aligned the work with our transformation programme that we had at last committee. So a lot, as we said at last committee, a lot of that work is about our children growing up in Bristol within our foster homes and the work that we want to do around that. So we've made sure that this strategy aligns with the work and the plans under that transformation programme. So in terms of making progress against kind of specific areas within the corporate parenting strategy, you'll all know that care experience as a protected characteristic was passed at full council in January. So already we have set up board to look at that and to make sure that we're progressing actions against that. So that's kind of exciting piece of work. Our corporate parenting panel, just look at both councillors, are obviously kind of progressing and developing in their work and understanding and oversight, so that has continued. A key area was about the voices of children being heard. So we have got a full staff team that are now supporting our Children in Care Council and encouraging more members and to make sure that that's a diverse and vibrant place to hear our children's voices. So we've still got some work to do around that. But what we've also done is we've worked together with our other colleagues who are leading on our Youth Council and are leading our Shadow Safeguarding Board under the Keeping Bristol Safe Partnership to make sure that we've got a join-up of perspectives and voices for our children and young people. So that's kind of a new bit of work that we decided to develop, so participation is clear and we have crossovers across those. A really exciting piece of work is our Care Leaver Hub that we now are progressing on. I think the lease has now been signed. I've seen all the floor maps and it looks really exciting, and a lot of engagement from our our care experienced young adults within that who've been quite engaged in what they want to see, what they want that hub to look like, how they want it to operate. So that's a really exciting piece of work that's moving forward now. Another piece of work is what we know consistently. Our children talk to us about wanting to understand their life stories and their journey, and that not being one discrete piece of work when a child might come into care, but as they grow older and as they develop and as they view their life differently and have different life experiences, that we need to keep revisiting that, and we need to keep talking to children about their journey and their experience in care. So we've now got monthly workshops for our practitioners, led by our therapeutic support service, to support practitioners coming to thinking about what conversations they can have, as well as concrete pieces of work with our young people. We've got a 2-day training programme that's now been established that people are engaged with, and we've had good feedback about that. And we've also supporting foster carers to do that work, because that's really important that our foster carers who are caring for our children are also able to have those conversations with our children and feel confident to have them. They can be difficult conversations, but really important to be held. So support for foster carers in doing that as well, and some training. We're planning our celebration events through the next year. That was an ask for our children and young adults, that there should, this should be positive, and we should celebrate, and we should have opportunities for that. And we've also progressed some of our work around our review of support for our foster carers. So that's really tightly linked to our transformation programme, how our foster carers are supported and valued and are able to then feel more able to ensure there's consistency in homes for our children. One thing that's been raised fairly regularly and has also come out of the corporate parenting panel is a request for more support out of hours. So in the evenings, things can often become and feel more difficult for our foster carers, and they can feel more alone with some of those issues. We have got a telephone support there, but we're looking about how we can add additional support into that, so foster carers feel supported and able to. I've just thought about our foster carers, not just for our foster carers, but for what we're trying to do is make sure that our children that are placed out of Bristol also have these opportunities. So as we've kind of reported here, we've had a higher number than we want currently of children placed out of Bristol in homes. And so we're also trying to make sure that they have the opportunities to participate and have their voices heard and be part of kind of the Children in Care Council. So that's something we've not really been able to really establish before, but we're doing that in a much more intentional way going forward.
Thank you very much. Liz, did you want to add anything?
Hi, Liz Small, Corporate Parenting Manager. I'm not James Beardle. I'm sure you'd be too polite to ask, though. No, nothing to add, but I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, so this is a non-key decision. So this is for us, an update for us. So I've seen Shona, and then I've seen Carrie. Okay, go ahead. And if anybody else indicates me.
Cool, thank you. This is really positive. I had a couple of questions. One was about the Care Leaver Hub, how that will be sort of promoted and advertised to the young people, and is that going to be publicly advertised, or is it only going to target specifically young people that we're still in touch with?
Yeah, it will be specifically for our care experienced young adults, and they've all been contacted, and we've got ways to contact them in terms of kind of virtually to ensure that they are aware of it, but they've been engaged in the development of it, and so that generally there's quite an excitement about the opportunities that will bring. There'll be kind of opportunities, there'll be a kitchen in there, there'll be quite a large social space, so it'll be kind of a drop-in place that will be staffed all the time.
Okay. And would it be possible for maybe members of this committee to visit it at some point when it's up and running?
Okay. Would be really great.
That'd be great, thank you. My second question was about the life story workshops. So obviously life story is a really important way for helping children to have an understanding of their life and where they've come from. And normally children who stay with their birth families, the adults around them know that and can tell them that. But when they've moved around, it's been more disjointed. So the workshops and supports being provided, does that include physical books that are being prepared for the children? And sort of how does that look in terms of who's preparing those and what involvement is going on?
Yeah, so children will often come into care and they will often be provided with physical books, things as they come into care to understand that they will keep forever. But as they grow older and develop, they want an understanding at a more mature level, at whatever age of development they are at. So sometimes that is about reviewing and going back over that physical kind of book or article that they've had when they've come into care, and reframing that and talking to them about that in a way that fits with their development. And sometimes it's just talking. Most children will have something physical. We use signs of safety, so we talk about kind of safety stories and why we do quite a lot of pictorial work when children come into care. So it might be around updating that, or it might be reviewing that and talking to children in a different language that's more fitting with their stage of development.
And is that the practitioners, social workers or family support workers doing that, or is the foster carers, are they expected to do it?
It's both. Foster carers have training as well, because it will depend for each child. So a child might have a really strong relationship with the foster carer and might have had a change in social worker. So it's about supporting and offering training and support to the foster carer to be able to do that piece of work, because that's who the child has a relationship with. Or alternately, if the child's moved homes but has a consistent social worker, it would be the social worker more likely to do that. But we're making sure that both are kind of trained and feel confident, and both foster carers and social workers are supported to do that work, whoever needs to do it.
Councillor Bales? One sec.
So I'm looking at a map on one of the I think it's the first appendix in this pack, and it says care leavers by ward of current address. So on the map it's colour coded, and it says Hartcliffe is the darkest colour, so there are more care leavers there, but there's an area that's grey, so I'm assuming that means there's no care leavers there. So why are there no care leavers in that area? Why are they all in Hartcliffe? Are they not welcome in that grey area? That just seems, why has it been missed off?
I'm afraid it is a guess, but it might be that the data is so low that it's not reportable. Sometimes if a figure is under 5, we don't report on it because it then becomes identifiable. So it could be that. I'm not actually, I can't tell which ward that is. I don't know, someone who knows the Bristol ward map better than I do could be able to tell.
I was wondering if it looks like Clifton, but I'm not 100% sure. Is that
Clifton down? Okay. Yeah.
So see this bit? It's just grey.
The concentration is really to do with where we've got availability and where there is housing availability, hence there being a high density in Hartcliffe and Withywood and Lawrence Hill. Great to see those councils represented here, because that will be a really important priority for those wards.
Is it also linked to where there's more social housing, like council?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So there might not be any in that area, or there'll be a limited amount in this grey area.
Yeah, and therefore there might not be, or either any or under 5.
Is it also? Is it also the case that where children in care originate from, or where they were originally Bristol, sort of living in Bristol, that also there's a discrepancy amongst wards, and children then, when they're leaving care, actually their ties are with their area, because they go back to. Is that also part of the picture that care leavers, they're able to request areas that they would like to have housing in?
Yeah, I believe that's definitely a factor, but I don't think we're clear on about how much of a factor that is, whether it's more availability or more desire about which area to live in.
Councillor Bells, did you have anything to follow up with that on? Because it's...
Just curious, because it seemed odd that there was just one grey area, and it's quite apparent that there's none there.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Collar?
Yeah, I was thinking about when we sort of say about children in care, foster parents and all that sort of stuff. Do we actually include children that are being looked after by family? Are they classed as care leavers? So if they're living with grandparents and then they want to move out and get a place of their own, do they get the same as foster children that are in foster care in terms of they are care leavers?
Yeah, if they've been children in care and their family members have been approved as foster carers, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hurchin.
I just wanted to say that we went to the event for the Mockingbird foster carers, and it was really nice to talk to foster carers, because sometimes we see these reports and they're all on paper, and now we're actually talking to people who actually do the work and who are actually there and on the front line, and it was really, really inspiring to do that. It was quite really good. So I would look forward to having more sort of more practical, more visiting things. The other thing that hit me is that it goes up until the age of 25. Do they just sort of drop off a cliff, or is there some sort of link? Because you still have your link with your family after you're 25, I should have thought.
Well, that goes back to Shona's question actually about the hub. So there's no cut-off age for the hub. So young people after the age of 25 will still be able to access those services via the hub.
Any other questions about that? Susan?
That's right. She mentioned the Mockingbird. I wasn't able to go to the launch because obviously I was at work, but I would really love to come and visit. That's not a problem.
Absolutely, we'd welcome you.
So if we just, the Mockingbird is a new way of supporting foster carers. So there's one, that was the first launch, and now you're already looking at setting up another, what they call it, a constellation. Yeah, so it's like spoken wheel. So in order to try to better support our foster carers, particularly out of hours. And I think it was appreciated that there were some faces there from the Children and Young People's Committee. Okay, any other comments or questions in relation to the updates? No? Okay, so I got some things I need to read out. Okay, so so we are asked that the Committee for Children and Young People note the progress in delivering the corporate strategy for 24 to 29, and that the Committee for Children and Young People continue to promote and profile the corporate parenting agenda across the council and with its key partners to give the strategy the best chance of success. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll be the seconder for that.
Thank you very much. So it's the second one, really. So it's this ask from us as members of the Children and Young People's Board that we will continue to keep our children in care and care leavers at the forefront of every committee that we might walk into, every hearing that we might be in, particularly if somebody wants to talk to us about their development in one of our wards, that actually we're reminding developers that we have responsibilities and that we're going to advocate for those vulnerable groups. So if everybody's happy to do that, could you please raise your hand if you're voting for? Okay, so that's unanimously for. Thank you very much. And just before we go on to item 8, is that good? Yep. Just before we go on to item 8, I should have said at the beginning, I do apologise. We've got the paper on the Youth Council that's coming in a few agenda points time, and some of those young people's reps are coming to speak to that, and they've asked to come in at 6. So we'll carry on, but what might happen is we might pause if it's a couple of minutes and then move on to that agenda item and kind of rearrange things at 6 o'clock, but we'll see where we are. Apologies for not saying that at the beginning. And please feel free, if you've finished, to when you've done with your paper, please feel free, officers, to move out and leave. Thanks. So agenda item number 8 is the Children and Young People's, this is our Policy Committee update report. And we've had some good feedback about the style of this paper and the way in which the kind of updates come to this committee. And as policy chairs, that message has gone out to all of the policy chairs, and there is thinking going on as to how might the model that's been introduced here be replicated or kind of adapted for other committee areas. So it's been noted the way that we as a committee have put these updates together. But I'll hand over to Hannah to go through the updates. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yeah, it's very much a report in progress. So as I always say, if there's things you want to know more about or less about, please do let us know, because we can include them, you know, whenever we do these. And thank you to the data team particularly for all the work that they do to get underneath the data on here. We have got 2 performance reports, just confusingly, on the agenda. That's because we have put in this additional update from this committee, but we've also got the corporate performance report running alongside it. I think I have to speak to them both separately, but obviously there's crossovers between the 2. What we are trying to do is to bring them into one. So bear with us, and thank you for that. So, I mean, again, just some things to highlight in the report. Happy to answer any questions. I think the first thing to say is, as we start with in the report, we had a year ago a number of tragedies in Bristol. The deaths of Max Dixon, Mason Rist, Darian Williams, and a further young person who is very poorly. And then we had the deaths of the 3 Bash children, Faraz Juri and Mohammed Bash, a few days later. So there have been events across Bristol to commemorate and remember the lives of those children. And obviously we want to continue to recognise the tragedy and the sadness of their families and their communities, as well as the staff and partners who were working with those children and their families. We are in the process of working through 2 child safeguarding practice reviews, which are due to be published, we think, early in the summer term. And so I'm sure we will have time to reflect here on those when they are published. And obviously we have heard from Mark Vanacres talking about serious youth violence today in previous committee meetings here. So I wanted to start by recognising that. We've also got in the paper a bit of an update around serious youth violence work with schools and trusts. So we did some work with the Youth Opportunities Fund in the last few weeks, who are supporting us to bring more closely the work of schools and trusts with the work of serious youth violence, which will be part of our extra familial harm strategy, which I think is scheduled for this committee in the early summer term as well. And obviously we've got a big paper today on youth, and we've got the Bristol Youth Council, and they will talk about serious youth violence as well in their committee. So I won't talk more about that. The other thing that we did in the last month was that we appointed permanently Vic Verma, who is here with us as the Education Director, the Director of Education, Inclusion and Skills. So it's lovely to have Vic with us permanently, which does bring, yes, congratulations, Vic, does bring a permanent children's services team, children's education team now. And I was pleased to have celebrated a year in the post as well recently. So I think that gives us good stability in terms of the scale of the work that we've got to do going forward. In policy terms, the government has been busy on producing lots of pieces of work, particularly with a focus around place. So we've had the devolution white paper, which I know has been the subject of discussions elsewhere, but place matters very much in children's and education services. And we've also seen in the reforms which have been are being rolled out in social care, a focus around neighbourhoods and place. In family hubs, there's an update in a paper around how we work in place with family hubs. We have got a focus around from the NHS now starting around the NHS neighbourhoods, and then we've got from the Ministry of Justice and the Home Office a focus around prevention partnerships in place. So I think in policy terms there's a sort of challenge for us, on all of us, on how are we thinking about localities and place in our services, and how do we meet opportunity mission from the government's perspective in our thinking about this work going forward. And our Families First transformation programme, which we talked about last time, definitely reflects that in the work to develop a neighbourhood focus in social care with a focus around family hubs. We were really pleased that in the budget there contains 1.9 million investment in social care, and it's new investment, so it's new money. We have precious funding on top of that, which obviously we're very pleased to receive. We've also got savings, but the 1.9 million is new funding, and it will be funding significant additional capacity into the social care services, as we've talked about before, which will really help us, we hope, keep children safely at home with their families and reduce the costs of high-end social care support. Other things in the paper. So at the QIP board this last month, we looked at the front door, and that was just before we knew we were going to have an inspection on the front door. So that was helpful. I've talked a bit about the inspection, and we'll talk about that next time. We also talked about children missing education, and electively home educated children. Will bring a report on children missing education to the next committee in full. There's and then just if I get into the data, we have a paper on DSG and special educational needs, so we can pick up any of the questions around our work there. But obviously, the percentage of EHCP plans finalised in 20 weeks continues to be a really significant concern, as Christine has already said. We are starting to see, but I recognise it's only starting, and many parents will not be seeing this at this stage. We are starting to see glimmers in terms of increased production of EHCP plans as a result of our investing in the service and supporting a restructure in the service coming through. But we obviously recognise that there's a long way to go, as has already been said. And we'll talk to the work that is going on in the SEND service through that separate report. Other things on the data, so attendance continues to be of concern, and I know it's a concern for the committee. So what we're seeing is a slight reduction in school attendance. We would expect to, we shouldn't see that, but we do often see as the year goes through, it starts high and starts to drop. That is what's happening. But of particular concern is secondary attendance, and particularly attendance of young people who are attending from between sort of 80 to 95%. There are a lot of children who have attendance at that sort of level, which makes a huge difference to their attainment and progress. There's also a significant number of children, obviously, with severe absence, which also brings is of real concern to us. So we're looking at both severe absence and persistent absence, which is that 5 to 15% missing school, and are working closely through our services and with the sector and all the secondary schools particularly on how we can support children to attend school as much as possible. And happy to bring a further report on that if it's helpful. As I say, children missing education we looked at QIP. It has slightly risen in this report. We still think that overall we're seeing it as below the national average for children missing education. Sorry, it's slightly dropped in this report. But obviously the reason children missing education is either because they're not on roll or because they've been taken off roll. And what we need to understand is why both of those things are happening. And it may be that there's waiting around particularly the fair access panels, or the children, there's a data issue, children have moved out of the city. So it may be that there's reasons why those children are missing education, good reasons, but obviously we need to understand that, and Christine has been pushing us hard to be able to explain that further, and we'll bring a further report on that. And then other things in the report, I'm happy to pick up any further questions. We've seen child protection plans and looked after children numbers dropping, and obviously, you know, that those numbers do fluctuate, and we'll continue to look hard at that. It may well be that numbers are dropping because we're able to support children more effectively closer, as we're seeing caseloads dropping, as we're seeing the service, we're investing in the service, and that's our supposition, but obviously we're looking hard at that. And then into education. So we held an event last week around the education vision for Bristol and how we can work across all of the schools and trusts in Bristol to focus around improving the outcomes, particularly of children living in poverty. We looked particularly at the data and Bristol has a significant challenge around children living in deprivation and their outcomes. And so we had next door nearly all of the schools and all of the trusts in Bristol represented in the room, together with employers, together with young people, together with the voluntary sector, together with both universities. And it was really a focus around how can we work together in a long-term project around improving educational attainment. I understand that these things have been done before in Bristol. This is not a new approach, and so therefore we want to make sure that we're doing it at a pace that is both going to stick and stay and is going to see both short and long-term improvements. So again, happy to provide further updates on that in due course. There are strands in that work, particularly around targeted improvements, so those schools that are not making sufficient progress, tackling racism, representation in schools, and an area-based lens, particularly around attendance. We're also looking at services around schools, as well as inclusion. So a number of areas across education, the education vision, and we haven't talked a lot about that in this committee because it's early work, but we're happy to do that in the future. Just last couple of things on education. We have consulted on the reduction of PAN for a published admission number for primary schools. 6 primary schools across the city, 4 academies and 2 maintained schools have consulted on reducing their published admissions number. And I think we have now announced that we are reducing those 2 PAN that were maintained and the 4 that were academies. And it's a good thing, because what we're doing is we're having a managed process where we're reducing provision of places together across the city to recognise the fact that there are now fewer children in our schools. And it's better that we do that on a planned basis than lots of schools are half empty, which, as we know, has a financial cost, has a teaching and learning cost, isn't good for anyone. But obviously, because of the mixed provision in our city across the academies and maintained sector, we've got to do that in partnership. So that's what we're seeing, and I think it's great that we've seen both academies and maintained schools come forward, and we need to do a lot more, which is why we've put in the paper that we'll come forward with both a primary and a secondary provision plan, because as Councillor Townsend keeps reminding us, this problem is going to be a secondary problem quite soon. So, so we can talk more about that. And then I think the only other things that I haven't mentioned already, we've talked about corporate parenting strategy, we've talked about serious youth violence first assessment. I think that's probably it. Thanks.
So thank you very much to Hannah for giving us that update. I do want to come back to the 1.9 million additional investment into children's social care. So these are 35 members, full-time equivalent staff members that will be based in locality hubs working with families close to where they live and where hopefully their children are educated. So those workers will be meeting whatever the needs are of those families that walk through the door. And as we know, domestic relationships, domestic abuse, domestic violence is very often associated with some families that need support. So those workers could be working with the adults in that household and or the children in that household. So that investment that we're putting in is about meeting those needs. So unfortunately, the chances are issues around domestic violence and domestic abuse will be a large part of those 35 full-time equivalent staff members. Equally, there will be children and families that may well need short breaks, and so therefore, if that is what the families in those areas need, that is what those staff will be in a position to be able to provide. So I know there is anxiety around the reduction in both domestic violence investment and special educational needs short breaks, and that came out in the budget last week. But what we will point to is the investment that we're putting into our localities that far outweighs any amount of money that was taken out of those 2 areas. And we are of the view that children's services is exactly where the investment needs to be, so that you are approaching this from a whole family perspective, and you are therefore in a position to work with families and children where they live and near the schools or the nurseries or whatever it is that the children are attending, and it gives better coordination across those services. So I just wanted to make that point to any of our CYP members that might have had anxieties around those two particular areas last week as we went through the budget. And the second area that I'm particularly draw attention to are the CME figures. So this on our report, it's point number 25, particularly looks at CME and elective home education. Those numbers have significantly come down since September, but it's that there's a 5% within that CME that haven't had education for over a year, and that group is particularly being investigated now, as Hannah said. So I think we are getting to the point now with this with the numbers that are CME to really digging down and seeing what is going on for those children. Which did I? Children missing education and elected home education. Sorry, it's point 25 on here. So the children missing education group was getting, I think it was over 700 in September. It was over 700 children in that group in September. And that's come down, and it's 300 and something now. But of that, 5% have been identified as not have had any education for over 12 months or more. So the needs of those groups of children are obviously going to be looked at, and we are having the discussions around how is it that we identify what is emotional avoidance of school, emotionally based avoidance of school, and how is it that we might adapt or provide the services for those children and families, and those conversations have begun to take place. And you have to be able to identify what the needs are for groups of children like this on a very sort of quite a granular level, really, in order to then anticipate what it is and be able to provide those services for them. So those conversations are happening, and those thought processes are going ahead. As for the school place planning, we, as a local authority, we want to do everything we can to keep all of our primary schools open. We have seen a few close in the last couple of years, and the reality, unfortunately, is if a school closes, the chances are it's never going to open again. It's very, very, I think I've met maybe 2 or 3 in my entire nearly 30 years of working and being around the education system that I've seen that. So wherever it is possible to do it, we will work with the schools and the trusts to keep those schools open. Having said that, if a primary school is an academy, it isn't our decision. And it comes down to the multi-academy trust or the individual trust that runs that school to make that decision. But where we can, we will suggest maybe that they put in some nursery provision, or they think about having some special educational needs sort of inclusion units within their school, because those are the needs that we know exist for our children in the city. Thanks. So I'm looking at my colleagues. Has anybody got any comments or questions? If we start with Katja, and then Kerry, and then Susan, and put your hand up, anybody else?
Mine is more of a comment, really, and it's about the children in poverty, and I'm glad to see that there is work going on in this, and I do feel it at the schools as well. I can see that they are trying to tackle this and trying to work with it. But I find it rather ironic that the very schools that are trying to tackle the poverty pay their staff, their support staff, so badly, and try to skim every half an hour of wages off them. And quite frankly, most of our people in poverty are usually in work. There might be a disability in the family, but they're usually in work, and they're usually in that kind of work, both in the schools, and also we should need to look at what our charities that we support, not just what kinds of salaries they pay, but also how they pay their workers. So do they skim every half an hour off and not pay them during the school holidays, only statutory holiday, no sickness pay, that kind of thing? That's what makes you poor. And that is an important thing to look at to make sure children aren't in poverty, is pay their parents properly.
Thank you. And we're a living wage, aren't we, as a council? And we'd encourage all up, are we?
the living wage is an hourly thing. And I get, for instance, paid a good salary an hour as a supply teacher, but I know that I don't make enough money because I only get paid statutory holiday. I don't get paid sickness leave. When my mum dies or whatever, then I don't get paid that week that I've got bereavement leave. And all those things add up, and you end up earning quite a lot less. And I've seen the TAs and things and how they get paid. I mean, I've looked into it to see if, and they don't get paid holiday pay, a lot of them, and some of them come to start work at 9, finish at exactly 3, even though the school finishes at 3:10. That wasn't a TA, that was the technicians in the DT rooms, and they get a similar pay scale to TAs. And because they're trying to cut them and keep them part-time and not full-time, because then they have to pay them something else, a lot of them don't get sickness pay. So the conditions that, I will say that these are trusts, not because I work mostly in trusts. And also I've seen charities pay really poorly, play workers, whatever it is, pay really poorly. They might give you a good hourly wage, but they cut everything off so that what you're taking home is very little, and also you're not secure. And this is the two things, the insecurity and the fact that you get everything cut off, is what creates the poverty. And until we as a society start going, hang on a minute, maybe we should just pay the parents better and more securely, because that's what parents need. They need secure money. That makes all the difference. We will have this poverty problem.
Yeah, and there are very often adverts that go out and you get paid for the weeks that you work, as not as a teacher, but as a school member of staff. So that means you don't get paid for the 13 weeks that you're on holiday, other than the 4 weeks that you're statutory entitled to. So actually, the wage is 10 months.
Yeah.
Spread out over 12 months.
And that's TAs are permanently employed under that contract.
Yes. Yeah. No.
Not just TAs, all the support staff.
Yeah. Okay, Susan, you were next on my list.
Yeah, mine was just a bit of a question. You mentioned about state schools, primaries, academies and all that sort of stuff. But when we're looking into sort of like how we're involving schools and educators within the work that we do we also include independent schools and colleges and stuff like that? So they're like not necessarily under Bristol City Council or academy status.
Yeah. So certainly FE College, our post-16 providers, if you like, because the college is one, but there are the post-16 landscape, as we'll learn from Jane later on, is an array of, sort of all sorts of providers that are in there. So yes, because they're also, they're providing what we might consider to be post-16 state education. Independent providers that are SEN, but if you're talking about fee-paying, sort of take an exam to get a place type schools, that isn't, I'm aware that the Bristol Education Partnership has a couple of links with some of the private schools there, and there is the sort of children in care, a programme to try and get children in care that are able academically and stable-wise, which is to be able to maybe go to an independent school and get a bursary. That is based in one of the private schools in Bristol, but that's a tiny number of actual children, particularly from care, that are going to be in a position to ever access that.
I'm thinking about the companies, organisations that run courses for 16 plus that are subcontracted by things like City of Bristol College. So it kind of sets them, they kind of come under the City of Bristol College, but are they actually treated and involved in the same way that independent, in terms of how we look at education across the city, that all these little pockets of little bits.
Jane might be able to fill it. I don't know. Can you? I'm thinking of the under 16. So I'm thinking that as a council, there are providers out there that would be providing education for children that are under 16, and they absolutely would be brought into any kind of discussions that are sort of ongoing for us. Would that be the case for post-16?
That is the case, yeah. Because we've got a statutory duty in relation to tracking all 16, 17-year-olds, are they in learning or in work. For example, a good example is HWV, who are subcontracted by City of Bristol College. They have a really excellent track record and programme with engaging young people from that Hartcliffe and Withywood, and their data definitely is with us. So we do see the total picture.
Yeah, I know they do, but it's just making sure that everybody that is kind of not necessarily in the main core of education and kind of like are on the outside, it's just making sure that, you know, that everybody who is educating a child within the city walls have that involvement and are included in whatever we do under the Children and Young People Services.
Yeah. So you're talking about the kind of partnership, so they've got a voice and they're...
Yeah. So it's just making sure that, you know, that is what we are doing. That was just the question, is how fully are we doing that?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. So there is, we have got both colleges. We had both colleges in the room yesterday, whenever it was, last week. But there is a post-16 forum of providers in which they need to be all represented, and so we just... Yeah.
We do have a forum. We met recently, and there were some brilliant community partners that were part of that, alongside the colleges and sixth forms. So we try really hard, because their voice and what they provide, it's often niche provision, which is really important.
A little bit like the early years sector, where we're trying to engage.
It's just nice to know that is kind of out there, not only, you know, HWV aside, but all those other places that are, you know, I mean, because I know we have a voice, but it's like, does everybody have a voice? It's like making sure that we're kind of tapping into this. And then the other one I was thinking of is CME children. How many of those children that are missing education because they are still waiting for specialist education, because they are SEND and they're waiting, so they're not actually in education because they can't find education that will support their learning, so they're not in learning. Does that come under CME as well?
I mean, I think that is the sort of thing that we want to lay out. We want to set that out. Many of those children will be in they'll be in schools. The question is whether they're attending. So they will be counted on the school roll whilst they're waiting for a specialist place in some cases. So no, it won't always include all those children attending specialist schools, waiting for specialist schools,
because there's going to be a little percentage of those that aren't able to go, because although they're on the school roll, the school won't actually have them in school. Kind of thing.
So if a child is on a school roll, they wouldn't be children missing education.
Yeah,
because
but
by
they're
definition,
not actually
they would be
attending
pupil missing education.
Yeah.
And it would be under the specifics of that school, because that school's legally responsible because they're on roll with them.
Yeah.
If a child had a education plan with a named school, then it would be about that school would then be responsible for educating that child. Now, I'm not saying that all of those children are going all of the time. We'd have to look at those figures, but that those children also wouldn't be in this category. Vic, have you got anything that you want to add to that?
We are looking at, I don't have the data in front of me because it is a intersection of two data sets, as colleagues were saying. So there are children who are in a setting awaiting a placement in specialist provision, and then there'll be a smaller cohort of children who are not attending. That could be emotion-based school avoidance, that could be a number of things, could be children who are home educated that are looking to go into specialist settings. So I don't have the specific figures. I was just trying to see if I could find them, but when we bring the report to committee, we can keep that as a bit of a line of inquiry.
Oh, thank you very much.
It's a good question, and it's one of the reasons why we really want to dig down in, so that we because unless we, it's like until we started asking these questions, this was a group of children that just they were counted, but nobody was really kind of going, what's actually going on for these kids? What do they need? And how are we going to get them back into school? The numbers fluctuate, particularly at particular times of the school year for obvious reasons. So they will be higher in September. They just are, because kids come in and out. It might be that there's a number of these children that are no longer in Bristol or are no longer even in the country. And so there's quite a lot of, you can imagine the bureaucracy of trying to track down children that have, for whatever reason, are no longer in the city. So there's probably a few there, and there will always be probably a few there. But I think the first bit is understanding what's going on with the Fair Access panel, because in theory, all of these children should go to the next one. But obviously, it's much more complicated than that, and we need to kind of look down and see what's going on.
So I found the figure, if that's helpful. So the figure for children with a education, health and care plan that are missing education, so that doesn't necessarily mean they're awaiting a specialist placement, but that they are missing education, is 40, and that's lower than the figure in January the previous year. So that's a January figure where it was 43, and that's come down from December when it was 55. So there will have been work continuously with that cohort.
And that is children awaiting specialist.
Well, that's children with an education, health and care plan that are not on a school roll.
Not on a school roll.
Not on a school roll. So they may be waiting for
Yeah.
a school placement, a specialist placement, alternative provision. And that's an active cohort that we work with.
Okay, that's fine. So, quick question. Are these children missing out on specialist education because we do not have enough specialist education in Bristol?
So I think, as I said, there'll be different circumstances for each of the 40 in the data set I've got. Some might be awaiting specialists, and that might be because of that could be partly around sufficiency, that could be partly around they're waiting for a specific type of education, but there may be some who are waiting a placement back at mainstream. So it will depend on the specific circumstances. I don't have specifics for the 40, but I'm sure sufficiency would play a factor in that.
Thank you very much.
Can I just add? I mean, I suppose we'll talk more when we can talk through the data. But one of the things that Vic's doing is looking at the inclusion of all of these children, so that we're intersecting, as you say, the severe absence, the children missing education, the elective home education, and that we're clear about the different groups, and particularly we're drawing together the services so that we're supporting children across the services. So it is an area that Vic's focusing hard on, and we'll continue to bring updates here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Kerry?
We've talked quite a lot about children missing education and pupils missing education. I was one of those children for whatever reason. So I wanted to ask whether, because you mentioned school-based avoidance, so that's when the child can't, for whatever reason, attend school. But are you also looking at things like off-rolling? Because sometimes it's not always the child that doesn't want to go to school for whatever reason. They just aren't. So sometimes it's the school's fault. And also my second question was around closing schools. So is there yet any mechanism to bring them back under the local authority? Because I've only ever heard of it once I think it was 2018. It was in the Isle of Wight, and they had to get permission from the government to link this senior school back to a primary school, and that's the only example I can find anywhere. So there's no mechanism.
Yeah, there is in the legislation. I'm not sure if they're looking to change this. I've not heard that they are, or are they? To bring academies back into local authority.
So no, there isn't legislation to bring academies back into local authority control, but there are mechanisms that if a school was to close and it was an academy, if the local authority is the freeholder of the land and the lease would then terminate, that we as a local authority may choose to put something else there, which could be a special school, could be supporting nurseries, or other forms. So it's a slightly different mechanism. It could become a satellite of an existing provision as well. So there are some mechanisms in terms of how we might use it as an asset if an academy closed and therefore the land came back. Does that answer your
There's
question?
no mechanism for individual schools or anything like that. Like, so it would.
No, once a school becomes an academy,
That's it.
that's it.
Yeah.
There isn't a legal route for schools to come back under local authority maintained sort of governance. I think that's what you're, yeah. And what was the previous one?
About pupils and children missing in education, will you be looking at?
Oh yeah, the off-rolling questions, yeah. It's about off-rolling basically, and kind of how might we as an authority understand the detailed practice that might be able to demonstrate off-rolling or sort of assess it in any way. It's quite difficult because we're not. Do you want to? I don't know whether you want to comment on that with the increased sort of registration stuff that's going on. There's attempts on.
I mean, it's illegal.
Yeah,
I suppose is the answer. It doesn't stop it from happening, and it's illegal. Obviously, it's illegal to take a child off your roll. That's not to say, that there can be, attempts to persuade a parent to take their child off the roll. So I think that's the question as you look at when there was a decision to remove the child, particularly to be electively home educated by the parent, was that something that was encouraged or was that something the parent took? And so that's been the debate. But yeah, taking a child off your roll is illegal, and Ofsted are all over that, as I hope are we. So it shouldn't happen. But I think that's one of the questions, is where we've had children come off roll, they're not registered as electively home educated, what's happening? And that's what we want to be working as what I think everyone in the city would want to be working through.
Yeah, I think just to add as well, if there was a circumstance where a parent felt that a child was being off-rolled or had been off-rolled, where that was a complaint either to the trust or the local authority or to Ofsted, if it's to Ofsted, it would be investigated by our safeguarding team as potentially a safeguarding point, really, and that's part of our safeguarding education service. Or alternatively, if it's via a trust or a school, it will be to the school's complaints policy or the trust complaint policy. But there are mechanisms. I'd say the one that we are most involved in is Ofsted.
And Sarah?
I'm all right. My questions are actually answered by Susan and Kerry's questions, so I'm fine.
Oh, okay, thanks. Councillor Freeman.
I think we've talked about this before, but thinking about the, trying not to use an acronym and now I've forgotten what it stands for, but the reduction in pupil numbers, the places that the published admission numbers. I know that we've had this sort of blip that has worked its way through and is now sort of coming out the other side, and we feel that we're sort of reaching more of a plateau in terms of those numbers. Do we have any sense of the next sort of 5 years, whether those numbers are likely to go back up again, or is this was that blip definitely a one-off? And just thinking about all these changes that are happening within the sort of school estate and what the stability might be.
Yeah, so in the primary phase, birth rates are low and have persistently low for some time. So that's where the 800 to 1,000 surplus places comes from. So we'll be developing a school organisation strategy that covers primary and secondary, but particularly primary schools are experiencing that now. So whilst there's been some reduction in published admissions numbers in primary, we'll need to go further next year and the year after. The data forecasts about 7 years out, and then it gets a bit hazy as it's dependent on mostly birth rates, actually. So mostly data we get from health in that respect. So we can predict to a point. Bristol does have some transience of population from the region, but that's a very small factor in the overall figure. So I wouldn't be able to predict when that might come back up, and that's a broader national issue, but does affect cities greater than some rural areas.
That's really interesting to hear, because obviously we've got all this development happening, we've got more population coming into the city, one of the things when I first moved to the city was that bulge. I was one of the first things when I moved into my street was, where is my child going to go? And it was a really big concern. So, and at that point, it felt like the council didn't have that sense of what's happening. It felt like we were at crisis point and something that could have been predicted 5 years out, because we were pregnant with children that were going to go to primary school. So it's reassuring that we've got, it sounds like, this sort of slightly better sense of what might be happening.
Yeah, I agree. What can I say, really, about school place planning? Yeah, I mean, this is also why we want to keep as many of our schools open as possible, because we can reduce the sort of numbers that come through reception, but the capacity is still there, and the birth rate will go back up at some point, because there was the 80s saw a big upturn in birth rates. So it will be cyclical, and 10-15 years time there may well be another uptick in the numbers of children that are coming through the system. And you could, in order to increase the numbers in a school that they're taken into reception or to year 7, you just go through the process of reducing the intake, but in reverse. And actually, I don't even think you have to consult, do you, when you expand? You have to consult only when you reduce. So schools will just, will be in a position, hopefully, to be able to say, over in this part of Bristol, we know that we're going to need 3 or 4 new reception classes over the next couple of years. Please, can you up your numbers that you're taking in at reception? And the space will be there. Now, you could say if it's already been taken by something else, then there's a bit more of there's more complication with that. But part of the increase in the number of children with SEND is as a result of the increase in the birth rate and the numbers of children that are coming through our system. So with the reduction in the number of children needing reception, there will be a corresponding reduction in the number of children that will need SEND support. So, it's an ever-moving feast, and so the flexibility that we can create now will set us up for quite a period of time, I would suggest. Anybody else looking to come in and ask or comment on that? Okay, thank you very much. So we are asked to note the report for that agenda item. Number 9 is the quarterly performance report, but because it's just after 6:05, and we've all, I'm sure, noted that our representatives from the Youth Council have come to join us, I'm going to skip onto item agenda number 10, which is the Bristol City Youth Council report for 2024. So this is the annual report that comes from our Youth Council. And it's been included in our agenda pack. There aren't any decisions for this item. It's for information and discussion. However, our members of our Youth Council have come to talk to us about those areas, particularly within the report, that they want to highlight to us as the Children and Young People's Committee. And so I'm looking over to our young people to see, have you got an order of speakers, or somebody going to say? Okay. Do you want to, introduce yourselves, and thank you very much.
Okay. Hello, my name is Sam, and today myself and other members of the Youth Council will be presenting to you our Bristol City Youth Council 2024 report. The Bristol City Youth Council is a group of 29 young people chosen to represent Bristol's youth. The main aim of the Bristol City Youth Council is to represent the voices of young people in Bristol and campaign on their behalf. In this report, we have discussed the topics raised in the area youth forums by young people of North, South and East Central in 2024. This concluded with our annual Youth Voice Conference held in November 2024, where we discussed the most highlighted themes that came up across all area youth forums. We would like to acknowledge all the young people in Bristol that we are honoured to represent that have helped us last year, including all the youth organisations and youth workers who support young people. An Area Youth Forum is an event led by the BCYC where young people from their local areas share issues, discuss topics and convey opinions in a safe environment. In order to keep our information up to date and to continue to meet with local young people, the BCYC holds Area Youth Forums 3 times a year, and one Youth Voice conference at the end of the year to gather information and convey it to people with the power to help and prevent issues. From last year's area youth forums, we have heard many different things, yet common themes amongst North, South and East Central together are knife crime, youth violence and lighting. However, each area had a point that differed from the others. For North, it was women's safety. For South, it was mental health. And for East Central, it was profiling from security guards based on prejudice. The four most discussed topics were communities, youth services, safety and knife crime, which will be used to decide the next term of youth councillor's main priority.
Hi, I'm Ellen, and as a youth council, we hold an annual Youth Voice conference each year during National Youth Work Week. One of the special things about this conference is that it is youth planned and led. Throughout the night, there are no adult voices, which ensures a real emphasis on the voice of young people. The aim of this year's Youth Voice conference was to bring as many young people together as possible from across Bristol to discuss our 4 identified themes from the area youth forums: communities, youth services, safety and knife crime. For the first half of the evening, young people split into groups and took part in discussions around the 4 themes. For the second half, young people were given the opportunity to discuss these issues and their experiences in the council chambers. Adults joined young people by sitting in the public gallery and listening to the young people's discussion. At the end of the evening, young people voted for their most important issue to decide on their area priorities. Our report is based on the discussion notes and transcripts of the chambers taken from this event.
Hi, my name is Jesse and I'll be talking about Theme 1, Communities. In various areas of Bristol, young people have shared both positive and concerning views about their communities. Many praise the accessibility, green spaces and sense of community, especially in places like Hillfields and St. Paul's. However, issues like poor lighting, the closure of youth services and a lack of safe public spaces were frequently raised. In East Bristol, young people expressed concerns about business closures, drug use, fly tipping and inadequate public transport. Also, in areas like Lawrence Weston, Southmead and Lockleys, highlighted safety issues including women's safety, antisocial behaviour and a need for more community spaces and services. Fly tipping and litter were also concerns across North, South and East Bristol, with many calling for better lighting, cleaner, safer environments. Overall, the key message is the need to improve lighting, safer spaces and more community sport to create a better environment for young people in Bristol.
Hi, I'm Matilda, and to quote the Welcome Wednesday group at CYN, youth services are key to life as a young person in Bristol. We were told many positives of youth services, such as it being a good place to socialise, learn new skills and participate in a variety of activities. Young people say they're able to receive support from youth workers, providing a safe environment. However, young people found there were issues with youth services, including a lack of funding from the government, leading to the closure of youth centres and infrequent sessions. They feel that a lack of youth services and support of trusted adults can have a significant impact on them and their communities. They told us that they would like more accessibility for youth services, with more integration of SEND young people and sessions for older young people aged 16 to 18.
Hi, I'm Mackenzie and I'll be representing young people's ideas and opinions around safety in Bristol. Young women feel unsafe walking, specifically at night, meaning they worry about how they portray themselves after experiences of catcalling, intimidation and verbal and sexual harassment. Young people in Bristol have said that police are more reactive than present. This is because young people have said that there has been issues in the community such as racial profiling, harassment, and a lack of effective policing. In schools, young people feel unsafe because of the toxic environment surrounding bullying that extends online, such as social media and websites. Young people also have worries and after witnessing drugs and vapes being sold, knives being carried, and alcohol consumption on school sites. Young people have told us that the majority of bullying today happens online. This is because of how unsupervised and unprotected the internet can be. Young people are asking to see more lighting in our parks and streets and alleys. Young people want to see more school intervention with bullying and more guidance for cyberbullying. With the police, young people want more police presence and for them to do more work with bettering their relationships with the members of the community.
Hi, I'm Darius, and our last theme was knife crime. Knife crime is one of the biggest issues in Bristol and nationwide, given the most time for discussion at the Youth Voice Conference. We heard about different perspectives from people across Bristol, starting with the fact that knife crime is a very wide concept that is not being discussed a lot in schools. In some schools, there is increased education around knife crime, plus training which raises awareness on the issue. Knife crime can have very detrimental impacts, especially on young people who can experience physical and mental effects. This may cause a cycle of fear as more young people feel pressured into carrying knives, further worsening the problem. One of the main problems is the lack of surrender bins, bleed kits, or other equipment needed to save more lives on the streets, as well as less training for young people using these items. There were also concerns about more funding for public transport to allow young people and youth workers to travel safely. Parents also need support to not feel judged when bringing up conversations with their children. Some students also feel there is a lack of police presence in schools to demonstrate what they are doing to tackle knife crime. There is also a lack of patrolling officers to make people feel safer on the streets. Lastly, relationships between police and young people must be restored in order to build trust in these communities. Misuse of social media, such as bullying or fear-mongering, can also amplify the effects of knife crime. It must be controlled so that only useful information around keeping people safe is shown. There are debates around increasing education on knife crime, as spreading more awareness can cause more help and more harm at the same time. However, young people need the options for support, so more funding to train specialists like school counsellors to deal with these concerns is required. Punishments like exclusions may also further the issue of making young people vulnerable to knife crime. With all these comments, knife crime is a broad topic that requires many pieces to fall in place before being solved. As the youth have told us, awareness of the issue is the biggest deterrent of knife crime. We should provide preventative workshops for younger children, support if you have started to carry a knife or know someone who is, what to do in a knife crime incident, and more awareness of the results of being involved in knife crime.
Following the vote on area priorities, the North area chose safety, the South area chose knife crime, and East Central chose youth services. As a youth council, we are looking at how we can assist our areas with their identified priorities. Being able to hold an entirely youth-planned and led discussion around issues facing young people without any adult voices was something very rare. To have over 100 young people attend was amazing, and to see this has helped us create a report that accurately represents the voice of Bristol's youth. This means we get to relay their messages to change makers like yourselves. Following our report being published, we have applied for the first stage of SIL funding for more lighting in the North and East Central areas. We also have plans to work with the Safer Options team regarding a project that aligns with our campaigns and the issues brought to us by young people. As a city that is constantly planning for the future, it is key to look to our young people as the future will become what we make of it. We ask two things as a result of our report. The first is that you just show young people what you've taken away from our report, including feedback to us if and when actions have been taken on these issues. We just want to see that young people have been heard and listened to. The second thing is that you help us as a youth council continue to advocate for the young people's voices with opportunities like us being here today. Thank you.
So thank you very much for coming in and talking to us about your report. I'm looking to my colleagues to see if there's, I can see hands going up already. Okay, so how long have you guys got, or are you happy to stay until this committee's done with asking and probing? Okay, so we'll see how we go, because I would imagine that there'd be quite a lot of interest in this. Okay, Shona, Henry... Okay, catch my eye. Yeah, go.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing this and for organising it. I'm sorry I couldn't make the event. It sounds absolutely amazing. I particularly resonate with what you say about there not being enough surrender bins. As far as I'm aware, there's only 2 in Bristol outside a police station. And obviously, if you're carrying a knife, you're probably a bit nervous about going into the police station with it. So I think that's something that we would definitely want our colleagues in the police to work with community organisations to, you know, the youth clubs that are still around in other places seem like the obvious spot to put them. My question was about the area youth forums in 2025. So I noticed that there's 3 coming up this year. I think one of them's happened already. Is that something that you want adults and counsellors to attend? And if so, are they sort of like split different, and you might not have the details on you at the moment, but I'd love to attend if possible, about where where they will be and who's welcome?
With area youth forums, they are split into 3 area youth forums. So one is held in South Bristol, one is in East Central, and one is in North. So if you wanted to come to one, you would probably go to the one which is closest to you, obviously. The dates I am unsure of at the moment, but I do know that the one at the end of the year is usually held during Youth Work Week, which is the hang on, sorry, I've got it here. It is, yeah, the Youth Voice Conference is held during Youth Work Week. So if you wanted to come to that one, you have the details of that ready. But for the 3 that are being held throughout the year, we've already held one, but for the other 2, I don't have the dates at the moment.
Just to add on that, I think it depends what area you're in. One of our youth area youth forums, one of our youth workers brought along some police officers, and we were like, we didn't actually want them there. So one of the things we discussed last week was at our last area youth forum was like what the young people wanted to see. So we asked them if they would be interested in hearing from councillors. So I think it's an area specific thing. But if we want, if there's an area that wants you guys to attend, then you'll be informed. We'll send out emails to all the councillors so that we can get a good number of people who we want to hear from.
Okay. Any more, Shona?
No, that's great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Henry, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. Really good report. It was really good to see such high attendance at the youth conference as well. It's really positive. Your report was very, very good and detailed, and I think the things that sort of resonated with me, and I'm sure with other members of the committee, is the concerns around knife crime and online bullying. And you're absolutely right. I think the key to tackling this is, working with having workshops and greater education, especially in schools and youth clubs, to really sort of dive into the problems and seeing how we can solve them. Knife crime is a scourge in our society, and it's something that we need to work with collectively to solve.
Thank you. Kerry, and then Sarah. No, Susan, sorry. Susan.
Mine's not a question, it's more of an invite. So I know some of you have emailed me about the lighting in Wilmot Park, and I think you've had a response from the Parks Department, which wasn't probably what you wanted. But I'm interested in what you've got to say, because I care about women in my ward, and it's been a bit of a bugbear that there's no lighting in Wilmot Park and that women don't feel safe. I don't always feel safe in the park. So we do have a women's group, so you can come along and talk to us at that women's group. And we're also having an International Women's Day event on Saturday at Mowcroft Church, 11 till 3. So if any of you wanted to come and talk to us at that event, or just meet with us in general, I'm interested in what you've got to say.
That's great. We can inform the other members and see if anyone's free or living locally that would like to attend. And it's just something we can look at sharing with the young people who are specifically from that area and close to that area, and tell them that that's something they can do. We have applied for SIL funding in the North and East Central areas regarding like the parks that came up, and then in the South area, we heard from some councillors about work that's already going on, so that's why we didn't apply for SIL funding in those areas. It's not like we're just neglecting South or that South has great lighting or anything. There are already development plans in those areas, which is why we didn't apply for SIL funding, and we're going to have those people come in and speak to us about what development plans and what's happening in those areas. So yeah, thank you.
So my question, I'm from South Bristol, and obviously I saw the ripple effect of what happened when Max and Mason were targeted that night. And you say about communicating with the police, getting involved, and finding ways for the police to kind of do more sort of preventative stuff and stuff like that. Have you actually spoken to the police to talk about what your needs you feel the needs are for young people, especially in some of the areas across Bristol where obviously these incidents have happened?
So yeah, we have talking to certain police officers. I think we talked to the head commissioner. I forgot her name.
Claire Moody?
Sorry?
The Police Crime Commissioner?
Yeah.
Is that Claire Moody?
Believe so.
Yeah,
Sorry,
so
I'm
you've
not- my
spoken to
memory-
Claire. She's, really
Yeah,
good.
but we are very open to talking to other members of the police force in terms of tackling knife crime. And we believe in order to work out the best relationship between young people and police officers, we just need to, have these talks, show that the police are doing something to deter knife crime, to show that they're on the streets, to show that they're in schools, they're in all these places, they are understanding where young people are coming from, and they are just there to protect us.
So you kind of want to see more police being more involved in going to youth groups, going to schools and stuff like that, and actually listening to the kids and stuff like that sort of thing. Just especially within the community, because you've got like the community officers rather than police officers, so the ones that are kind of like without handcuffs, as they keep calling themselves, and having them more involved and maybe going into schools and youth clubs and areas like that and actually doing stuff. Because in South Bristol, we've got community officers that actually come in and work with my youth, and we actually do stuff on knife crime and all sort of other workshops and stuff. And I think this is something that I would like to see across the city more. And it's like hearing you kind of asking for that is like, okay, what is our next step? How can we now kind of make that happen? So I'd be quite interested in kind of seeing how we can make that happen. And involve the police more in what our youth actually want, because they're kind of scary otherwise, aren't they, really?
Sorry. I thought I'd mention something else that I have also spoken to Claire Moody before. Once was in a virtual, I think it was like a Teams call about like lots of things like crime involving like knife crime, women's safety, and all those sorts of issues. And they have mentioned that they're working towards it. They asked everybody who was like on the Teams call, which was members of youth, for opinions, what they feel should be done, and the kind of like moves they should be making as police to try and prevent these crimes from happening. And there was also a second meeting I went to, which was in person this time. However, Claire Moody could not attend this one. However, there was other people working in prevention of crime who were there. They asked us for opinions as well, so they are doing a lot to work against preventing, they're working to prevent things like knife crime and women's safety. Well, they're trying to work for women's safety and against knife crime.
Thank you very much.
Okay, anybody else wishing to ask? Oh, right, yeah, sure. Put your mic on. Oh, okay, sorry, I thought you'd finished. Beg your pardon.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I forgot to make a point. But in the Youth Council as well, we have our campaign groups, and one of these campaign groups is entirely based around the police. And so far, we've been working in our campaign, and as well, as Sam said, he went to meet the Police and Crime Commissioner, which has like really helped us as a campaign group build on and kind of build that bridge between the youth and the police relationship. And we're hoping by us working together kind of attracts youth and says, oh, look, they're working with the police, or can we try and, like, you know, put differences aside and trust them. So as well, it's just trying to, again, just build that relationship back together. Thank you.
And then another thing is that we've done work with early intervention teams previously, and we've got meetings coming up where the chief inspector's going to be attending, and I think Vic's coming to one of our meetings as well, who is, and also, no, Vic, the other Vic. Vic's in the police, yeah. We've worked with them in the past, and we're looking forward to working with them more over the next coming months to both hear what they're hearing as people, as police officers, and so we can relay the message of what young people want from the police. So that's updates.
Thank you very much. That is absolutely brilliant. It's just that I know that the police are really keen to work with young people, and it's about getting them to be able to actually access young people like yourselves that are really eloquent and able to kind of say what they need. And I know that Claire Moody and the police officers that I work with in South Bristol are really keen to do that. So if you're actually already doing it, what a wonderful world we live in.
Yeah, but also if there's any other additional help that you guys ever have to offer on any of the issues that we're working on, we'd love to hear it and work with you guys more. So if you have any other connections that you'd like to share, we'd always appreciate those.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm looking at my Ellie.
Sorry, probably a really stupid question. What's the easiest way of getting in touch with you guys?
So that would be through Claire and Nick, I think. Oh, sorry.
You can. Oh, sorry. We do have a Bristol City Youth Council Instagram that you can check online if you want to keep updates about what's going on at Bristol City Youth Council. However, there is also an email you can get in touch with us for, and it is seen on posters in, I believe, just the main area of the City Hall. Yeah, and it's also on the website, like the Instagram.
Yeah, no, like the council website.
Yeah, it's on the it's on the council website as well. But if you do not check the council website and you do see a poster of us about the Bristol Youth Council, it should have an email in the bottom corner or many ways to get in touch with the Bristol Youth Council.
Okay, I think that's exhaustive comments and questions from my committee. Thank you, all the committee, thank you. Thank you very much to members of the Youth Council and for our youth support workers for making this happen today. And one last mention, I have used your call for better street lighting in 2 areas in Southfield Ward. One is going across the new cut along Ashton Avenue through that park over to Gravelsmythe, and the other one is around East Street because the developers they've built 2 quite tall building block of flats, and there's no lighting in the street right at this moment, and so people are scared to walk down there, and I don't blame them. So thank you for that, because it really makes my argument more powerful, and it's really difficult to say when young people ask for something, for it not to be then taken seriously and be taken forward. It's just that you need to ask for it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks.
Oh no, yeah, we'll just say we'll keep it. We'll mention that and say that the message has been relayed, and we'll tell that to the South Young people at our next area youth forum.
And I'd look at my committee members and I'd say, look at this and use it. I'm using it in members' questions next week as to why something hasn't happened and why it needs to happen. Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Okay then, so just after 6:30, we're moving on to the next item now, but please feel free to stay or if you wish to hear, please, that's fine. So we're going to go back to item number 9, which is the quarterly performance report. So this is quarter 3. So this is as of the end of December. Yes. Quarter 3, that's right, isn't it? Quarter 3 is from April the 1st to the end of December. It's correct, isn't it? Because it's financial year. So this is so this is update on the council's business plan. So there aren't any decisions. This is for information. Hannah's going to speak to this report to look at the children education elements of it. Yeah, thanks.
So it's quite a difficult act to follow. So, I mean, as I say, there's quite a lot of overlap with the update report. So I won't repeat myself. And I think the other thing about this performance report is it's looking at our performance against our own business plan. So have we done the things we said we were going to do? Obviously, you need to be able to see those actions really clearly, and that's what we've brought out in the text. And in the development of the new corporate business plan, I think there are ways in which we can make this more sort of simple in terms of our reporting, and that's work that we're wanting to do. We're doing at the moment. I think things that I haven't already talked about. So I haven't talked about the reducing the percentage of children in care placed out of area and increasing the percentage of children in care placed with in-house provision. So that is work that, as you know, has been part of our programme for some time. I think the total numbers are that we will have increased our capacity by June 2026 from 15, where we are currently, through to 40 from June 2026, 40 places. I think that's across 8 children's homes, including the disabled children's home. I'm looking to be only for the numbers. So we've had a significant expansion of our in-house provision. And obviously we need to do that well, steadily, because as we run homes, that we are the registered provider of those homes, we need to make sure that the quality is good enough, is good for those children. We need to make sure that the standards are high, and therefore what we don't want to do is do that too fast, too quickly. We have had really good progress in delivering children's homes to date, but we need to make sure that we keep that going. So we are working hard to increase our in-house provision at the pace that we should do, and that is part of our transformation programme. The other thing that is mentioned in here is the EHCP 20-week timeliness. I've already talked a bit to that, and Vic can talk to it further, particularly around some of the top-up, the children who are receiving top-up, who are moving into the EHCP process, and have as part of the reason why we're seeing such demand and wanting to work through that systematically, which we've talked about before in this committee. And I think the only other thing to say is 2 items mentioned here. One is around, we were pleased to see progress against the audit recommendations for the services for sanctuary services for refugee and asylum seekers. And I think what we've got there is a really, a service that we're really proud of. I know that we celebrated Bristol as a city of sanctuary recently, and we have seen really significant progress, both in terms of performance, but also in terms of finances from that team, and we're really proud of that. And then also mentioned in here is plans to deliver an anti-racism in school strategy. So that is part of the work that we will be progressing through the education vision work, led by and from and with educators across the city, looking particularly at race representation, disproportionality, and particularly recruitment and retention of teachers and leaders across our schools. So that is work that is in train. I think we're planning to see it through this committee later on this summer, but that is work that we are progressing. So I think that's all I wanted to highlight. Thank you very much.
Okay, so looking at committee members, has anyone got any comments or questions in relation to the areas that are being tracked at the corporate level? No. Okay. Whether that's good or not, I'm not sure, really. Okay. There we go. It's the level of reporting that we're getting. Thank you. So, Vic, can you just expand, please, on the issue with the ending of the top-up funds and what we're doing in order to try to manage the numbers as they're coming through our front door for EHCP assessments, so that can be managed over time?
Sure. Just get that part of the report in front of me. Okay, so over the calendar year 2024, so particularly from March to now, we've seen a sustained increase in the number of requests for assessment. So if you take, for example, that the Southwest average was somewhere between 9 and 11% on various local authorities, what we were experiencing was about 33% increase in that time. And that obviously would be alarming if that was a kind of organic demand, an organic kind of increase in demand. But actually what we know that relates to is it's almost entirely attributed to the decision to remove high needs top-up funding, which has been a feature of the SEND service in Bristol for some time. And I suppose in a nutshell, what that funding offered was early intervention funding for about 1,000 children to the tune of around £8 to £9 million, with small grants to schools to support individual children. A decision was made in February of 2024, and this would have been under the previous administration, to remove that top-up funding. And that then set off a wave of schools requesting education, health and care plans, and that's essentially why we see that increase. So that's the explanation of why we see the increase. What we've been doing, so myself and the team have been doing over the last few months, is analysing that data, getting a better understanding of which children sit within that cohort. Many of those children have funding for 1, 2 or 3 years, so it's not that there's an immediate cliff edge. Some of those children will be would have seen that funding come to an end, say for example in July of this year, some in July of 2026 and some in the July of 2027. So there would have been a scaling off over time, and that was part of that cabinet decision at the time, was the funding comes to an end when the package, at the point at which that package was agreed. What we determined, though, as a service was that we want to extend that transition period. We want to make sure that there isn't a position where children who are in receipt of that top-up funding see that come to an end before perhaps an education, health and care plan is then put in place. So that transitional period will be extended. We're going to be writing to schools next week with the details of that alongside some training, and there's also a letter that will be going out to parents and carers, which we have co-written with our Parent Carer Forum, and that will allow some time where those children, where those schools have requested an education, health and care plan for that child to then, for our service to be able to support, but also ensure that children who are in receipt of provision that's working well, that funding is still there for school. So what we've tried to take is a common sense approach in terms of support for children, but put some framework behind that so that we can process that in a reasonable and meaningful way.
Thank you. Has anyone got any questions or comments in relation to that? Katya, yeah.
I'm not quite sure where this question comes in, but it's something that's been on the top of my mind, and things I've been observing and seeing all around is that I've got a piece of casework out at the moment where someone has got their EHCP, but they haven't been paid it, or the school hasn't been paid it. And I've heard from some other people that had other casework where they also got this top-up funding or whatever program it was, and then the monies didn't come through, and they actually lost some of the services that they were going to commission with it. And it's also come through from a school that I'm governor of as well, where the payments were really late. So there's like a theme going on. This is what I'm asking about, not specific cases in this particular committee. Is this theme of late payments? Is that, I don't know where I would ask that question.
I think this is a good place as any.
Yeah, so I think happy to look at the specific matter. There is a bigger piece of work that we have set off in a project to look at payments. So in the perhaps in the report coming up next, there'll be a bit more information. But we did identify that there are some data quality issues. There are some issues in terms of accuracy of those payments. That's an ongoing piece of work, which we've now set off through a project to look at a reconciliation of those, but also a data cleanse. And some of these issues date back many years. So if I speak to lots of head teachers or business managers, that will say that there have been challenges over a number of years in terms of accuracy of payments. So the project we've set off is there to look into that. We have a dashboard that shows us the number of errors that need to be reconciled, and then our team is slowly working through those. So it's an ongoing piece, but we are trying to cleanse multiple years of issues, in terms of those payments being accurate through this project, so that we have a more sustainable solution.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, so are we happy to note this performance report? Yep, everyone's nodding. Thank you very much. In that case, we will move on to, we're now on to agenda item number 11, which is the Youth Engagement and Post-16 Education Training and Employment paper. And this is a hugely significant piece of work and a very important group of young people. And it's a particular focus because it involves Bristol City Council, but as we've said, it involves huge numbers of post-16 providers locally, but it also moves into the combined authority's responsibility and therefore out into the other two local authorities that are also part of WECA. So it's a very complicated area of work, and I couldn't possibly claim to do justice to it. So I'm going to hand it over to Jane Taylor, who leads here. And Jane, can you maybe start off with how it is that your area has been financed, because you're particularly successful in bringing in finances, aren't you? And I'm sure our committee will be happy or very pleased that there is an area within our kind of portfolios that isn't massively overspending and getting huge amounts of.
Thank you. Thank you for those kind words, Christine. I'm the head of Employment Skills Lifelong Learning. It's the first time I've brought a paper here today, so that's really great to have the opportunity to come and present. And my work area, as Christine said, it's funded probably 90% through external money that we bring into the council. So we're very good at that, and we've got a very positive reputation out there amongst funders, which always helps. So this paper actually started life as an information paper, with the initial focus was on how could we improve our engagement and support for young people, older young people. So it's great just meeting those young people today. But actually, following recent government policy and funding announcements and our joint work with the combined authority, this report's kind of shifted, and it's actually now a key decision, asking if we can take up 1.98 million for new work to reduce our the number of young people who are not engaged in education and training and employment, age 16, 17, and for a new youth guarantee trailblazer, which we are wanting to focus in South Bristol. So just a little bit of background. You've got the report. What we did in this was we outlined what some of the challenges that we're seeing with the evidence. And you've heard, you've seen in this committee the data in relation to the young people living in our most deprived super output areas, and the increasing social, emotional, and mental health needs, post-COVID, cost of living crisis, and the impact that's having on the ability to engage in education. So I went delving into what are our statutory duties in relation to young people, older young people. And I found lots, and they're all in your information pack, which is really interesting. And I took part in an LGA discussion about post-16 yesterday. And a lot of the people who have my role were complaining that they have all these duties, but they have very little. They feel like they have very little power and they have very little resource to actually fulfill them. And the two duties that really cover this are the participation of young people in education, employment and training, and the duty relating to services and activities to improve young people's well-being. But the thing is, we've been doing quite well here in Bristol, keeping the focus on young people with the combined authority. Their main duty is the economy. So we've been talking with them about, well, the young people are the future of the economy. So we need to invest in those young people. And now the government in November published the intention to devise a national youth strategy, which is going to involve young people's input. And that includes significant new money for this youth guarantee trailblazer. So there's lots of new resource coming through, and there's lots of opportunity here, and we've got scope to build on what's already in place, because there is some really fantastic work and there are some fantastic providers going across the council and with all of our partners. And when we look at the current system, you can see all of the positive developments that are underway across education, children's social care, including this youth council work. So I've taken the opportunity in preparing for the paper and today, talking to lots of stakeholders, and including young people. And there are some clear areas where we can focus. Reviewing the offer for young people. We heard, didn't we? They said there aren't enough trusted adults. They said there's not enough there for 16 to 18-year-olds. They talked about public transport. And for South Bristol, they talked about the issues of mental health. So there's something about what is our offer for older young people in the city? How do we communicate that so that young people understand it, parents and carers understand it, all our staff understand it, and our partners too? And we have a real opportunity to make sure that youth offer is really clear in our new early help and prevention model in localities. We've got an opportunity to work with employers on how they come and step up and provide experience of work, internships and apprenticeships for young people, and keep this great working relationship with the combined authority and our neighbouring authorities to bring the resource in. So I guess that's it in summary, which is there's some great opportunities here and much to build on through our improved coordination and development.
Thank you very much for that introduction. So I'm looking to my committee members to see if anybody's got any comments or questions. We'll start with Shona, but catch my eye if you've also got something to add. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you're right in saying obviously young people are the future, and this is not only about their future but all of ours, because they'll be leading and doing and changing the shape and the face of our region in future. My specific question is that from what I understand, so this links to a wider part of the city in that we need to do retrofitting, right? We need to retrofit all our houses. There are not, my understanding is that we do not have enough trained people trained up to do the retrofitting that's required, and that there aren't enough being trained up through WECA, through the apprenticeships. Has that been discussed and looked at, and what are the plans around that?
Yeah, that there is an awful lot of work underway through the Combined Authority. That is a major strand of their employment and skills plan. They've got some good people now on their team who are pulling together that green skills retrofit offer. And many of our colleges are really stepping up in that space. And do you know about the Mission Net Zero initiative that's underway through this council? I'm very happy.
Remind me in case I'm not sure.
That's led by the climate change team here at the council, and they invited us to put forward a retrofit green skill initiative as part of that, and it's just getting going. So I'm very happy to send you the information just to show you what's coming down the pipe.
That would be great, thank you. And when would we so obviously, so you're saying we're working on it within the council, but also WECA are working on it as well. When would we expect to see some announcements as to the results of that work, or what the plan is, how many spaces are going to be offered in the coming years?
Yeah, well, I guess in terms of why it's so important for the Combined Authority is that they commission the adult education budget in the west of England, and they are, as the commissioner, they are the ones who set out the requirements for curriculum. And the other side of the equation, of course, is getting the employers lined up and making sure they're accessing training for their existing workforce as well as new people coming through. So this Mission Net Zero programme, the delivery is just getting underway, and it's involving all kinds of elements. There are grants for employers, there's grants for FE, there's more training coming soon, and the results of that will be available, I think, towards December this year.
So that you said that's the group within Bristol City Council. So we'll hopefully have some answers by December. Do you know when we might expect some announcements from WECA as to the results of their work?
Yes, that's certainly something that I could request and again forward. And the other dimension to this area is, of course, the investment in the buildings so that the jobs are there. And we've been in this very strange position where we know what's coming. We're talking to young people about the exciting careers of the future, but at the moment people can't see the jobs. So it's just kind of getting that wheel turning. So because as soon as we can see the jobs, the trainers will get on board, and we'll be able to really motor with that pathway.
Sorry, this is getting really specific, Christine, so do tell me to shut up if you want me to get back on track. But is it not that there's also opportunity for private retrofitting as well? It's not just within the council. So there is a demand in the private market, but obviously as a council we want to be having the demand in the public's market as well. Is that right?
Yeah. Do you mean in terms of the demand from homeowners?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is there's a strand to the Mission Net Zero around community awareness, and there's some fantastic voluntary sector organisations, Centre for Sustainable Energy, that are in that space doing that, raising awareness. I'll make sure that I can send you whatever links and information that I have.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and Katja.
I think you might know a question I have for you now. There's been a worrying trend, what I've observed, and I've spoken a lot about it, and I've now done lots of reading about it as well, and that is the use of AI in recruitment. And a lot of entry-level jobs now are becoming psychometric testing and all sorts of weird things. And I have seen young people that are quite capable really struggling with this. I do not feel it's fair to do that to someone who's 19 or 20. They have not developed a personality yet. We know this from science that your prefrontal cortex only settles when you're 24. But this seems to be a worrying trend. And how are we going to get these young people who've already got so many different disadvantages in their lives to get through some of these awful psychometric tests that they have online? Everything's online. And we're talking things like working at Sainsbury's, McDonald's, Pizza Hut, just entry-level jobs that you would think an employer would train someone to do, and it wouldn't expect a 19-year-old to know how to do, or 18-year-old to know how to do it, or whatever it is. And it's very worrying, and I wanted to know how you would deal with this specifically to help either young people get through them, because they're very difficult to get through, or to actually find out why they're doing them and they shouldn't be doing them in the first place.
Yeah, we did talk about that, and very interesting. I think there are two main things we need to do through our work, and one is, of course, we can't turn back the development of digital processes. So we really do need to make sure young people are fully prepared, and we coach them and we train them and we give them all the skills we can. For these young people, we're going to be engaging through the South Bristol Youth Guarantee. I think that's a different ball game. I think that's an opportunity because the scale of resource, we can work bottom up with the young people, finding out what makes them tick and what would make a really good entry role for them, give them some work experience, and do that work with employers so that they have more inclusive recruitment processes. I had a really amazing conversation this morning with two colleagues who work for UBHT up in Southmead, the Hospital Trust, and at a senior level within that trust, and it's a complex organisation like this one, they have committed to something called a community commitment. And I said, well, and they've changed their recruitment process so that anybody that takes part in their community programme gets an instant interview and in some cases an instant entry job. And I asked them, how did they do that? Because usually within the NHS, it's all online. There isn't a local process, it's a national NHS process. And she said that was just simply the senior leaders and directors decided it would be so, because it was the right thing to do. So I think once we build that picture of employers that are taking these steps towards inclusion, we can be really spreading that good practice. And I'm certainly going to be having a conversation with our head of HR here about how we might do the same.
I think that's really reassuring to hear, because it's quite concerning, really. The other thing I was hoping is to making sure that the young people aren't given an internship, and then when the internship's finished, that's it. They get another internship if they're lucky, so that they actually progress and actually get a decent job so they can start their lives.
Yeah, totally agree. And within our plans for the youth guarantee, we're contemplating some employer incentives so that those employers that can provide sustainable apprenticeships and ongoing jobs will be rewarded.
Just a final point, one of the reasons for good mental health is to have a decent, stable job.
Indeed.
Kerry, you were next.
So my question was around the amount of pupils or children, young people that go to university from Hartcliffe and Withywood. It's only 8%, and as we know in Clifton, it's 100%. So obviously we want to encourage young people from Hartcliffe to go to university, but it's really difficult when, like, even things like finding work experience placements is really, really difficult, and it's been like that for a long time. My daughter is 28 this year, and when she was at school and when she was at college, she had the same problems. And last year I had a young person contact me doing the same course that my daughter did, animal management, and still couldn't find a placement. And like, that's a long time for not much change. So we want to raise aspirations, and we want young people in Hartcliffe going to university. But it's not happening. And I know we're getting a micro campus, but that's in the very, very early stages, and they're going to be consulting people in the area, which is amazing. We love that kind of stuff. But how can we ensure that the kids, because they are bright kids and they're amazing, how can we make sure more kids from Hartcliffe go to university?
That's quite an ask. That's quite a big question, Kerry. So many elements to that. But Jane, anything from your perspective?
I think that's multifaceted. The part of the work that I look after includes giving young people really meaningful, high quality experience of work, so we can help them see what's possible, and we make sure we match them with mentors that perhaps have had some similar experiences to them. Sometimes you're approached by very willing people who want to mentor, but they're a bit from another planet. So we make sure we try and match mentors who perhaps have had challenges but have made it through. So for me, it's how do we really now expand the employer engagement with us so that we have a fantastic bank of experiences and great mentors that can inspire our young people to want more.
Thank you. I'm just mindful of, you know, when young people from Hartcliffe do get to university. I know one young person that was in my daughter's year at school, worked really hard, went to university, studied journalism, came back to Bristol, tried to get into that industry, and is now working in retail. And there's nothing wrong with working in retail, you know, it's a job at the end of the day. But, you know, all that hard work and aspirations to just be in the same position as if they didn't go to university. And it's really, really sad that things just aren't moving on for young people in my ward.
Yeah, I'd very much like to come and meet with you and talk about the new youth guarantee, because your experience will be really helpful for us. Thank you.
And Susan, and then.
Hi, Jane.
Hi.
One of the things because we're talking about aspirations of kids and stuff like that, and kids, especially in areas like Hartcliffe and Widowwood or any other kind of deprived areas, schools seem to think that it's okay for girls to be hairdressers or girls to be childcare workers, boys, you can be a mechanic, you can. They're not raising these aspirations. They're not teaching our children that actually they can go to university. And I'd like to see the schools and the people working within the schools and the colleges and stuff like that actually raise up those aspirations. Because we're not seeing that. I am a parent in Hartcliffe. Well, actually I'm in Witherwood, so I'm in the posh bit. But anyway, my daughters, I've got 3 daughters. My 3 youngest daughters are all at university. Now, that bucks the trend across the Hartcliffe area, but I was fortunate. I got to go to university because I went and did this really cool course, which raised my aspirations. And I think if we can raise the aspirations of some of the adults, and if we can encourage our children to go to university and to raise their aspirations, providing them with courses and activities that raise those aspirations, giving them life skills that raise those aspirations, so that when children do get to be given the opportunity, I can take this to the next step. My youngest daughter, she didn't sit a single GCSE. She's at university. So it's not an impossible ask for children without that academic side to still achieve. And we need to be proving that to our kids. We need to be showing that to our kids. We need to be engaging with all our young people through these kind of trailblazers to actually make this happen and give our children these opportunities that they don't feel that they're being given. They don't have to be hairdressers, and I got nothing against hairdressers. Mine is fabulous. However, that is not all there is out there for our young people. There's some fantastic jobs out there, and they don't know about them. They're not aware that they can do these jobs because they just follow, family traditions and where they're expected to go rather than where they should be given the opportunity to go. And I think that's what we need to do, is find those ways to kind of show them that actually just because you come from this area and just because you don't have an academic side doesn't mean you can't be more than whatever it is you think you can be doing. So,
can I just say that you've clearly been a real inspiration to your girls, and I'm so pleased you've made the link there with really good adult and community learning. This shouldn't all end at 18, 19. A holistic look at this that's why it's so important that parents and carers get access to good second chance lifelong learning because of everything you've just outlined. So thank you.
Yeah.
lifelong learning actually matters. I left school with no qualifications pretty much, and I did this wonderful course, and it enabled me to go on to do access courses, go to university. My daughter saw me go to university. They see the job that I'm doing now that I wouldn't have been able to do without that opportunity. So I think that is really important, that we not just raise the kids' aspirations, that we're raising a better future. We raise them, these kids and their kids and their kids. The higher we push our kids now is how it should be. There shouldn't be this, oh, well, you come from a deprived area, you can work in the local supermarket. There should be, you come from a deprived area and you have every opportunity given to you to be the person you desire to be. We shouldn't be holding them back under any circumstances, whether they're neurodivergent, whether they've got any kind of disability, wherever it is that they come from. There shouldn't be this postcode lottery about, you know, oh, you can go to university or you can be a pilot. Anybody can be a pilot. You only got to learn. You can learn to drive. You can learn to be a pilot. But you got to have that knowledge that you can do these things. It doesn't walk up and get given to people from better areas. You have to you have to want it, and we have to make them want it. They have to know that there is more than what you've got out there. So this kind of trade place.
Yeah. I don't think anyone would disagree with you. Well said, thank you. And Sarah?
Thank you. First, I just wanted to back to sort of the questions that Shona was asking. I actually, in my other non-councillor job, work for one of the organisations that's working with Retrofit West in terms of that. So I've actually got a little bit of knowledge about some of the skills work that's going on. But I understand, you know, we're involved in that because there is this real gap between people that want to be able to do the retrofit and things like that, but there hasn't been this buy-in to actually fund the skills historically. And so we have this real skills gap with people that know the theory of how to retrofit and things like that, but actually the skilled workers. And it's a really good project, so I'd be happy to sort of talk to you about what we're doing and part of that as that. So that'd be really good. Back to sort of my actual question. One group of young people in the city that it's been on my mind recently, and so I'd be quite interested to know if there's anything specific that within this work you're doing is our young carers. So people who are, you know, potentially missing out on education because they're caring for family members with sort of illness and disability, who do have quite often worse educational outcomes than some of their peers, and probably could really benefit with that sort of more targeted support in transitioning from education into adult workforce. And is there anything that you're doing as part of this work for that specific group of people?
It's a very good point, and I've been talking to our youth service commissioner about young carers, and for us, this again, with this youth guarantee, we'll have an opportunity for any young carers living in anywhere in South Bristol to be linked with a mentor and to be just given that advice and support into an employment pathway. So I'm really looking forward to that and really getting to know some young people in that cohort. But you've raised a really important point, and I think we could do more.
Thank you, that's really great to hear.
Thank you. I was just aware of the time, and I was just checking with the going over. Any other comments about that? Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the answer about young carers, but I'm just aware that we've got a motion coming forward about our support as a council for young carers, and encouraging schools and colleges to be better at identifying them, because we know that there's a huge gap between the number of young carers that we're able to identify and the numbers that probably those that are better able to predict numbers. It's about 1 in 4, it looked like, didn't it, when we were looking at the numbers? So actually there's a large group of children for whom the schools,
they're invisible.
Yeah, well, they're young carers and we don't know about it, kind of thing. So it might be that it's better conversations or more awareness within schools, or just making that group of young people more visible within the services that we do, and just talk about them more, and so that they might not even understand that is actually what the definition of how they are within their homes, that they are young carers.
I agree. I think this is there are lots of young people who are caring who are invisible to the system right now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any others for that? No? Okay, thank you very much, Jane. Hugely important piece of work. Hannah, you wanted to have a comment lastly on this one, didn't you?
I suppose I just wanted to sort of say that I think, as Jane said, this is a bit of a sort of first look across the whole area of teenagers, adolescents, youth. And we wouldn't normally do it like that. We'd look at social work with youth, or we'd look at youth services, or we'd look at attendance. But what Jane has done is to look at the whole period. And what you can see in there, starting off with 1,951 young people aged years 10 and 11 who are persistently absent from school. That's the future NEET cohort, if we're not careful. And then there's a question around exclusions, fixed term, and the conversation we've had about children missing education. Then we've had a conversation around adolescent social care and serious youth violence, which is obviously the work that we can see Fiona's team doing. Homelessness and young people, big challenge for us, which we've got in our Families First work. The area youth work, I wanted to pay testament to the work of the area Play and Youth Alliance that they do in our areas. They do some brilliant work. The voluntary sector working through the youth sector. They said in the national, it says in the paper, the National Youth Alliance, NYA, did a peer review of our services last year. One of the things they said was we need to look at the whole sector. We need a bit of youth championing. I do think we're seeing that from Jane in this paper, and I think it's really welcome to look at the whole sector. We've got a youth zone. We've got a youth participation agenda, and then we've got all the WECA stuff and post-16 work of your service. So we have got a lot of work going on with youth, but we don't necessarily, I don't think, join it up, and no council will. That's just the way that we're structured. But what the government it does seem they're saying is we're going to need a youth strategy. So I suppose what we're preparing for is, as and when that happens, or in any case we need to do it anyway, how do we look at the whole area, the whole age group, in a clear way? And I think what we can see is the beginnings of that here. What the paper also suggests is that we come back when we have developed our work around how we join up here, and I think we'd be really keen to do that. And I just wanted to finish on, I can't help but say, your question about university, it is about the achievement of young people living in poverty in schools, first of all, and wanting to make sure that we really, as far as possible, as we've all said, in this city, the question is around poverty and outcomes of those children living in poverty in schools, and particularly across all groups, but particularly in the white groups living in poverty in the city. And that is part of the work that we're trying to do around this education vision. And I do think that the opportunity is there for us to really we've got to make some progress for that group in order that more children from those areas go to university. So I suppose I just want to say thank you to Jane. I think it's a really important paper.
Thank you very much. And so it falls to me then to take, there are some formal bits with this. So we are asked as a committee for children and young people, number one, to note the content of the report and the information pack, including the identified areas to improve services for support for vulnerable young people, so Bristol teenagers and young people can thrive. And number two, and this is the one where we need to vote, so we're going to need a show of hands on this. So we're authorising the Director of Education and Inclusion and Skills and the Head of Service for Education, Skills and Lifelong Learning, in consultation with the Chair of Children and Young People's Committee, to take all steps required to negotiate with WECA, I was going to go like that, and to accept and spend the employment support grant funding of up to 1,923,000, no, is that right? Yeah. 923,32,000, or just under 2 million. just over 1.9 million, to deliver risk of NEET, so that's year 10 and 11, NEET reduction, so that would be 12 and 13, and the youth guarantee programmes as outlined in this report, noting that the youth guarantee programmes is something that the new government has brought in. Thank you very much. So, can I have a seconder to move the recommendations, please?
I'll second the recommendations.
Thank you. And then, please, can I have all those in favour, please raise your hand. Unanimous. Thank you very much. And that takes us, we're 20 past 7, so I thought we were running over, but apparently we're not. So that's all right. And that takes us then on to agenda item number 12, which is the Dedicated Schools Grant and looking at the deficit and the management plan. So this gives us an update on the progress on the management of the deficit of the Dedicated Schools Grant. Mainly it's the high needs block within that we know has caused the need for the financial management plan. There aren't any decisions, this is for information, but I'm going to hand over to Vic, our Director of Education, Inclusion and Skills, to introduce this report to us. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll provide a short overview and then happy to take questions, and we're joined by colleagues in finance as well for any more technical questions around the financials. So the aim of the report is to provide an update on progress on managing the deficit within the Dedicated Schools Grant, and particularly the high needs block. So local authorities with an overall deficit on their Dedicated Schools Grant typically will present a plan to the Department for Education on managing future spend, which is known as the DSG Financial Management Plan. Now there are a number of local authorities, probably in the region of 2/3, based on reports from the National Audit Office, that have a deficit on their high needs blocks, and this committee will probably be aware that the statutory override, which means that the high needs block deficit, which at the moment sits on the Dedicated Schools Grant as a separate grant, comes to an end next year at the end of March of 2026. At that point, if the statutory override is not extended, it would return then to the Council's General Fund account and then be treated as part of the Council's deficit. So there is a significant kind of looming deadline. We are waiting, I suppose, the spring statement, which might give us an indication of what's going to happen around that. In March 24, Bristol City Council entered into an agreement with the DFE to participate in the safety valve programme. And the agreement between the DFE and Bristol covers the financial years from 23-24 to 29-30. So it's a long-term agreement to bring the overall deficit back into an in-year balance by the end of 29-30 and each subsequent year. And within that, we signed up to several initiatives to support the bringing down of that deficit, and that's set out in the report. As part of the agreement, we provide ongoing monitoring of performance against those initiatives and financial information, so triannually. So it's a slightly unusual pattern in that we do that 3 times a year, not the typical kind of 4 times for each quarter, but that's as mandated by the DFE. And those monitoring reports include progress against the conditions and a financial dashboard setting out progress on the deficit itself. So since March 2024, when the agreement was entered into, the Council has provided 3 monitoring updates. So at the end of May, August and November, and I think the next one is due in May. I think that's right. Or April. So the way we have approached this in the Council is the primary delivery vehicle for implementing the required changes, both in terms of those initiatives, but other initiatives that we are delivering as a council that sit outside of the safety valve programme, is through the Send and Inclusion Strategy, which came to the committee in January and was approved, and also the delivery plan that sits underneath that. So all of that ties together as part of our overarching work to improve education for children with special educational needs and disabilities. We've highlighted 3 barriers in the report. So there does continue to be a rise in requests for education, health and care plans. I've referred to that earlier. Both that follows some of the national trend, but also some local specific policy areas as well. We do continue to use independent, non-maintained special schools to support children to meet our statutory duties, whilst also there is a significant programme to increase the level of specialist provision in the city. And then we mentioned about data earlier. That continues to be a barrier, but there is a significant project to address that. In terms of in the positive space, obviously the launch of the strategy has been significant in defining the work that we are doing now over the next 4 years. We've also launched what we've described as our SEND placemaking service, which is our capital programme to increase sufficiency of places in the city. And we have high confidence in achieving above the targets that have been set, with 80 of the 95 new specialist places planned for this September. We also have a SEND practice team, which is improving our practice, has been leading quality assurance work to make sure that we have high quality plans, but also developing our practice as a service. The launch of our SEND support tool, which is an innovative tool to support SENCOs in assessing needs and applying for funding early if needed. And then we had positive progress in our meeting with the Department for Education in November 2024, where the accelerated progress plan was lifted, so formal monitoring by the DfE was lifted based on their confidence levels of the work that we're doing and direction of travel. So whilst we acknowledge that's a positive step, that you know there's much more to do. And then as shown in the table in the report, the forecasted in-year financial position at the end of 24/5 is expected to reach deficits of £16.6 million more than was agreed in the agreement after the council and DfE contributions have been applied. And the main cause of that is the use of independent non-maintained special schools to meet that statutory need, delays in delivery of a number of schemes such as Send Free School and other projects, although we are continuing to focus on capital projects where we are delivering as opposed to the DfE, and then the impact and the payment of some historical liabilities, which refer to the point earlier around some of the challenges in the legacy of spend. So I'll pause there. There's lots of more detail in the report, but happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Vic. Okay, so I'm looking at my colleagues, see if there's any questions on this. No? Okay. Okay, no questions about it. Okay. Hannah, did you want to say anything about the DSG or what we know is coming up? Oh, right, sorry.
It was just about the judicial review.
I thought that might, that's kind of what I was,
Yes, I can do. So, I think firstly to say we do get a lot of correspondence from councillors and obviously parents asking questions and challenging us around the performance of the service. We've referred to it a number of times in this meeting, and I know that we do feel, really challenged and needing to focus on performance through the strategy work that Vic's outlined. So, I do, we have had lots and lots of questions. So we had I think, I can't remember where we were at the last committee. We have had the hearing for the safety valve judicial review. And as we know, this was brought by a parent. And the question was all about whether the safety valve decision in itself constituted the need to consult in and for itself as a decision. And so we had 3 days of court hearing. We're waiting to hear the judgment, and we believe that's going to be any day. But I think, you know, certainly from the services perspective, however we end up with it, it is our legal duty and our priority to make sure that we deliver for children with EHCPs in a timely, effective way, providing quality provision. That is what we'll continue to do, and it is what we're doing now. It's what we'll continue to do, and we'll take the judgment as it comes and consider it as it comes. I don't think there's anything else really we can say at this stage, other than it's still our priority to deliver, and it will continue to be.
Yeah, no, I don't think we can either. I mean, it could have come this morning, the judgment. It might come tomorrow morning. It might come next week. It's for the judge to, you know, serve that judgment, really, and then we'll take it from there as to what the next steps would be for the council, for the DfE, and what the implications might be. Okay, thank you very much. So, without any, with no further comments or questions then from committee members, we are asked as the Children and Young People's Committee to note the current position of the DSG financial management plan and projected financial forecasts as at January 2025. Are we happy to note? Everybody's nodding. Thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of our agenda and the end of our meeting. We are next scheduled to meet on the 8th of May, which is a Thursday, of course. Okay, and then so until then, thank you very much for officers, the officers that were here previously and the ones still here, and obviously everybody to our committee and our Democratic Services colleges for the support that you give. Thank you very much. Good evening.